Hello, welcome to Birding with Lois. My name is Lois Richter, and I am the host of this program. But I'm not the birder of this program. We have lots of folks who come and join us and talk about things like that. You may have seen the first two shows and have seen panelists answering questions that have been submitted, and that is our standard format. But tonight we have something special. I have a guest with me. His name is CHRIS TAYLOR, and he's been on the panel before, and he lives down near San Diego in a place called Carlsbad. Well, Chris has had lots of experiences as being a birder, and I asked him to come on and tell us particularly about the wonderful migration season that happened this year, and then also to tell us about his trip. He's going on an expedition for 5 weeks to the ocean out by Alaska. So welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Lois. It's good to see you today.
Good to see you too. So let's start with saying, have you been a birder a long time?
I've been a birder since about 1984, so hence all the gray hair. My father was a birder. My father retired to Florida when he was, after he got out of the military, and he retired to Florida, and he decided he was going to be a photographer. And he saw an advertisement to go out on a pelagic trip, which is an ocean-going trip, typically for birders. And the advertisement said, come out and take pictures. So he got on the boat and he traveled out to the Gulf Stream off of Vero Beach. And there was a lot of commotion on the boat. And he was trying to take pictures. That everybody was fussing about this seagull that had landed next to the boat. And everybody was fussing about it. So he started taking pictures. And some lady looks over at him and says, "Aren't you going to write this down?" And he says, "What do you mean, write this down?" And she said, "Birders keep lists of the birds they see. It's a listing game, so you have to write down the birds you see." And that bird turned out to be a little gull, which is extremely rare in North America. And there's categories of birds. Typically, ones that are very common are in the 1, 2, or 3 category. 4s are very hard to find, and 5s are very, very difficult to find. And a little gull is in the 5 category. So his first bird on his eBird list, his checklist, was a little gull, which is a very rare bird to get anyway. And I have not seen one, and I've been birding for 40 years. So he was a consummate lister, stamp collector, coin collector, people that like to keep lists of things they've done and capture. So he started getting absolutely into it, and he traveled all over. And my brother and I would go on trips with him just to spend time with our father. And so we would bring binoculars with us, and we kept lists. But we weren't really into birding like he was. We just we liked spending time with him. And so I got to travel all over North America, getting these incredible birds from up to Hudson Bay in Alaska, out to Newfoundland, Big Bend National Park, dry tortugas, just like, very exotic places.
How old were you when your father got hooked?
I was, probably maybe 30. So, and it was just, okay, I'll buy a pair of binoculars. I had these, I bought these small binoculars because I didn't think I needed the big cumbersome ones that are heavy and go around. So I birded for years with these small binoculars. Now these are very good quality binoculars. They happen to be very small, and I could put them in my pocket. And so I traveled all over, and all the real serious birders, they would look at me like, "Son, you need to get yourself a pair of good binoculars." And so it took a while till I actually bought a really good pair and stopped kind of doing it, because my brother started doing it. He started getting into it more than I did. So we have a little kind of little sibling rivalry on how many birds we've seen. So, and I talk to him daily. So it's, and we talk about what birds we've been out to see.
So you had those little binoculars for a long time. What changed that made you decide, oh, I need other ones? And what did you get?
Well, binoculars are based, there's a couple of things. Binoculars are based on size and how much magnification you can physically hold without shaking. All right. My father had a little bit of Parkinson's, so he got an 842, and it doesn't shake quite as much. The higher power, the farther out you're looking, the object is moving all over the place. So I got 1042s, and I bought Nikons because the Nikon Edge series, EDG series, had really good glass, and it was reasonably priced, especially for what I was going to use it for. I found them used on eBay for $1,000. Now it's still $1,000, but it's one of those things. If you're going to be out looking, you're going to spend your time out traveling and looking for birds, you might as well, take a good pair of glasses with you.
Did you find that your eyes were less tired using the new ones than the old little ones?
Yeah, what I found is the magnification of these small ones were the same magnification, but these are only 25. The objective lens is only 25 millimeters. The 42 millimeter lets in so much more light, so it was much easier to see birds in low light conditions. You just had to get used to this, 3 or 4 pound weight hanging from your neck. And so I ended up getting a harness to wear when I go out. And it's initially, look, birding is just kind of fun. Can you identify the birds in your backyard? And then you have to kind of have a reason. And part of it is this idea. To me, the idea is listing and keeping track of how many birds you can possibly see. So there's birders all over the world, and there's probably, 10 to 15,000 species around the world. But I concentrate on what's called the ABA region in North America. And it's from the Mexican border up through the northern regions of Canada, out into the Aleutian chain. And they've just added Hawaii to that list called the ABA. So I kind of concentrate on there. And I have a lot of friends that bird everywhere, and they spend time going down to Costa Rica. In North America, in the ABA region, there are approximately, really serious birders can get 850 species, some of them 900, but you really have to chase. So right now, in my 40 years of birding, I'm right around 650 species that I've seen in North America. And right now I live down in San Diego. So I was trying to make a game of this year because I'm retired now. So I'm trying to make a game in San Diego of finding how many species can I find in San Diego County for the year. So I get up every day, and not every day, but 2 or 3 times a week, and I grab my binoculars and my camera, and I go try to find a place where I have birds I haven't seen this year in San Diego.
So I know that people keep what they call life lists, how many you've seen in your entire life. But then there's different lists that people keep. Like I have a backyard list, just birds I've seen in or from my backyard. And yes, a Canada goose flying overhead does count. But then there's, the city list or the county list or the state list or whatever list you want to make. And do people have similar things like that all over? Or is it just where you are determines what kind of list you're keeping, or what?
There are so many thousands and thousands of birders. The lists they keep are very, very strange. There's a backyard list, like you say. I don't keep one of those. There's a 5 mile list, which is 5 miles from your house. So people that have a view maybe get their scope out, and it's any birds that they see from inside that 5 miles. So the people that have a view of the ocean and things like that, they get more view. There's county lists. The biggest thing is life lists for most people. But all this data goes up to Cornell University, the eBird, and so they use it for conservation and bird migration and how to protect species, how to know how many species are perishing, things like that. And the data is collected all over the world.
And we're going to do a segment how to use eBird and actually go through. If you're a birder and you're new, what do you do? What does it do? But that's another bit. For right now, I want to jump in. So let me tell the audience a bit. Chris has been with us on the show as we were preparing to go live, so practicing and everything. And then he's been with us as a panelist on the show, and I'm really very glad to have you. But he was saying things like, oh, there's how shall I put it? All these birds were migrating by down where he was. And so he had an enthusiasm for what he was seeing this spring. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to talk to you, Chris, is to tell us about what was so special about this spring. What, was it more birds, more kinds of birds? You were just out more? What was going on?
So part of the idea of keeping a list. So in San Diego County, I was birding last year, and San Diego County is unique because there's ocean very close. There are traditional parks and areas like that. And then there's mountains that are very close. And then there's deserts on the other side of the mountain. So you get all these different types of habitat. And so last year, there's a birder called Matt Sadowski, who is a local birder. He saw 400 species of birds last year in San Diego County alone. So, which is a phenomenal number of species. I think San Diego leads or is second to Los Angeles as the most number of species of any single county in the United States. So I said, okay, this will be kind of fun. I would get up, it's part of the thing about being old is what am I going to do today? So I get up early anyway, so I would just get my binoculars, my camera, and I would, I'll show you later, I get on my app and I would look for what birds that I haven't seen, where can I go find them? And then normally I would be out there birding in some obscure place, and I'll come around the corner and there's friends of mine, now birder friends of mine, that are looking for the same bird in the same place. Last week I was down by the Tijuana River Valley of looking at the wall between Mexico and the U.S. And I was out there at 6 o'clock in the morning looking for an indigo bunting, just out in the middle of nowhere, and hoping that I didn't do a nose plant. No one was going to be able to find me because I was out alone. And right around the corner came two ladies that I know from birding, and we were all looking for the same bird. We were all listening for the same bird. So it's a small community. So I get up, give me a reason to go bird. I go look for a different place and try to find different birds I haven't seen yet this year. You're muted, Lois.
I keep forgetting to turn that microphone back on. I want to turn it off when you're talking just so that it doesn't, take over, because it's sometimes.
I don't think you have any dogs barking, do you?
No, I just breathe heavy. Yeah. So when you got started way back when with your dad, and now you're retired and you're real into this, and what sort of stuff have you gotten in the meantime as far as birding equipment? And tell us how much people need or don't need. In my opinion, if someone is just starting out, all they need is themselves and some binoculars and the ability to go to the local Audubon Society and go on their trips. and they'll bring the scopes, and then that's, so that's like the basic, isn't it?
Yeah. So I birded for 40 years with just binoculars and a bird book.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have a camera. I didn't have a scope. I kept thinking, I'm not really that into it. I don't need a scope. I don't really need the camera. My brother Richard, who is very avid birder, he and I would go birding a lot, and he got a camera, and it became very evident that it's much easier to take pictures of birds and proper identification of the birds later, because if you've seen warblers, if you've seen yellow warblers with yellow faces and yellow butts, there are a lot of warblers that have yellow in them, and you're trying to figure out which one they are, or you're trying to figure out what sparrow that is, and they all have similar markings and similar beak sizes. So it became much easier to photograph them and then come back. So this year, I bought a point and shoot camera. It's over there. It's a Sony point and shoot. It gets out to about 600 millimeter, and it's just perfect for me. It fits on my belt, and I go out and take pictures. I don't do them. None of the pictures are going to be in National Geographic, but I enjoy it, and it helps me identify them, which is another listing thing, by the way, because now you submit the pictures to eBird, and eBird keeps track of how many pictures you've loaded, how many different species you have pictures of, which go to the Macaulay Library. So now you go, well, I need to get my picture list up higher.
So it sounds like the camera predated the new binoculars. You were still using the little.
I've had the new binoculars for about 10 years. Those were kind of essential, especially the trips. My brother and I try to go on a trip every year. So he and I are both going to Alaska, go out to Gamble Island, and I'll show you where it is on the map in a bit. And
we'll get to that.
And so he has the same pair of binoculars. Then he bought a scope. And so we would go places, and I would say, bring your scope because I want to look through it. And scopes are expensive. So it's all about the glass. The glass takes a long time, especially when you get these big objective lenses. They need to use this fluoride type glass so that you don't get the aberration on the sides. So scopes are expensive. So, he got a $3,000 scope. Yep, I know. And I was like, I'm glad you spent that money because I want to look through it. And so, this year, because I went out birding out to La Jolla Cove with some other birders, and they all had scopes, and all the birds are way offshore, and you cannot identify them with binoculars. They're just too far. So now I have somewhere back there is peeking out is my Koa scope. And my brother and I were just having a conversation today. Am I going to take that to Alaska with us? Because we're going to be out birding on an island in the Bering Sea. But am I going to lug that thing because it weighs a bunch and you have to have a tripod? It's expensive. I'm going to put it in the backpack and I'm going to take it with me. And it's so finally today I decided I'm going to take it. He's going to bring the tripod. I'm going to bring the scope. And
is that kind of a scope something that can withstand that extreme cold that you're going to be in?
The scopes are completely waterproof. And mine has a neoprene cover on it. I'm hoping scope is one of those things you leave in your will or you put it on eBay because they're expensive but very useful. In fact, after I bought my scope, my brother got scope envy, and he's trying to figure out how to sell his and buy one like mine. So,
well, you're brothers, you could share.
We can't, except he lives in Georgia, so he's doing a big year right now. He's trying to see how many birds he can see in North America in 1 year, and very similar to that movie called The Big Year, which is all about birding. And he's not doing it. He's not going out of his way, but he's doing his best to see what birds he can get without flying all over the country.
Mhm. Mhm. So let's talk about what birding is. And my hope is this show is going to encourage people who may be new to birding, maybe not, whatever, but to encourage people to go out and look at birds and talk about birds and find birds. And I am not I'm not a chaser. I really like seeing the birds in my yard. I like seeing that little flock of white-crowned sparrows come back every year. You know, it's like, there's George, there's Fred, there's Mary. I don't really name them, but it's that feeling of knowing that bird really well. And in fact, we talked about lists. I have a bird bath list. We put a bird bath outside our kitchen window 2 years ago, and I have diligently written down every time we've seen a new species. And actually, we just saw a new species yesterday or the day before. In the wintertime, we have the hermit thrush.
Yep.
Wonderful little bird. And they come back every year. And then today, Jim said, hermit thrush is here. And I went and I looked. Wait a minute, it doesn't have a rusty colored rump. Wait a minute, the color is just a little bit off. It's a little too gray. Oh, what's that white patch under here? So we went up, we got the app, we started looking around and decided it was a Swainson's thrush rather than a hermit thrush, which is, I've never even heard of one here. So this is really cool.
It's Swainson's thrush are migrating through right now. I haven't seen one yet this year, but they're being reported. And so they like to hang around and brush and move twigs and leaves aside and get things off the ground. So I'm likely going out tomorrow morning to go look for the indigo bunting, which I didn't get last week. And then hopefully find a hermit thrush, which is down there, and hopefully a calliope hummingbird. So it's, as you get deeper and as you're birding, if you have these idea of lists, as you get deeper and deeper into the year, it's harder and harder to make your list go up. It's pretty easy in the beginning because you can go down and get seagulls, and you can go down and get the normal, grackles and boat-tailed grackles and brown-headed cowbirds and things like that. But your list goes up pretty quickly. I'm going on a pelagic trip on Saturday, which is going to take 10 to 12 hours, and it leaves out of San Diego Harbor, and it's going out about 10 to 12 miles off the coast. And what we're hoping to see seabirds, because there's thousands and thousands of species of seabirds that just live on the ocean, and they don't come into shore unless the winds are blowing. So we're going to go out there, and hopefully there's some excellent birders on, because calling seabirds, shearwaters, auklets, things like that are flying by, you have to be really good. And so San Diego has a few excellent birders, and especially on birds, pelagic birds.
And when you go birding with other folks, are you usually part of an Audubon Society expedition, or are you taking commercial trips, or what?
Well, this is a commercial trip, but they advertise, there's a big birding community here in San Diego, which I just happened to find out how to get all the emails and notifications. And right now, because of San Diego's got California weather, there's probably one going out every month or every 2 months. And it's which one you want to take and when it can fit on your schedule. It's a long day, 10 to 12 hours in a rolling ocean, depending on the weather. So hopefully it's not too choppy. And you're hoping to see a albatross go flying by, or something that you haven't seen. I've been out on many pelagic trips. My brother was on a pelagic trip 2 years ago out of North Carolina, and there was a man on that boat that was looking for one specific bird, and he had been on the pelagic trip 82 times. Ooh. Looking for one bird for his life list. So wow. His life list was very extensive. So he could spend a lot of money going looking for birds. So,
Yeah.
But like you said, birding is really about neighborhoods and backyards and trying to get people interested. As you get there are a lot of species of birds. Initially, it's in East Coast, it's cardinals and robins and things like that, birds that are pretty easy to see, red-winged blackbirds. But as you get better and better, and you see that you've seen those, you see something else like the Swainson's thrush in your yard, you go, okay, what's that? That's new.
Yeah.
And so, I highly encourage parents to get their kids a set of binoculars. Kids have really good ears. If birding, using your ears to bird is makes birding an awful lot easier. Kids can hear calls and memorize them. And I don't have the greatest set of ears. So my hearing is good. I just can't recognize what the bird is. Luckily, there are a bunch of apps coming online these days that do a very good job of listening to bird calls and identifying the birds. So it's a new, birding by listening on your phone is a new thing.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, as people get older, the first part of the hearing that goes away is the upper part, those high little tweets and the annoying high-pitched hums that some of the younger folks complain about, that the older folks going, what? I don't hear anything. And so it's, when I go birding, if I know I'm going to be out with the little ones, with the little tweeter birds, I'll put hearing aids in. Otherwise, I don't. It's really nice. It's mellow. I don't hear all the paper rustling and all this stuff happening. But it is true. It does affect your hearing, affects whether or not you can identify a bird.
To me, if you're a musician, if you can hear music and play music by ear, you can become an excellent birder, because that's the part of the brain that's enhanced, and they can. Musicians can easily just go, they're just pointing and they're calling out, do you hear that? No, I didn't hear that. So maybe if you'd like, I'll show you some of the places I've gone this year. I have a couple of pictures that I can do. Let me see here. I'll switch my camera. It's on.
Chris is one of these high-tech guys. Yeah.
So here I went out earlier in the year. I went out to Agua Caliente desert, and this is, as you can see, this is a very large desert. It's those are the mountains. The mountains stop all the rainwater from coming over. And so it's very arid, but there are an awful lot of birds that love the desert. And because birds travel from north to south and south to north, they come up through these valleys and migrate all the way up. Instead of going up over the mountains, they migrate right through the middle of the valleys. So this is part of the desert. And then this is me going up these little trails. It's one of the places where you're out by yourself, and you hope nothing happens to you, because it's pretty lonely out there. So I went up this little there was a little oasis on the end of this valley where there were quite a few birds. These are some of the birds that I saw. On the upper left there is Acosta's hummingbird, and then Pacific slope flycatcher. And then down, the red-headed bird is a western tanager, and this little bird peeking over underneath the branch at me is a Nashville warbler. And just some of the birds that me having a camera I could capture, and I could go back later and help identify them. So then I got California thrasher up on the upper left. One of the birds I went looking for is the bird in the upper right, which is a green-tailed towhee, which is rare for San Diego. And then birds that are not rare, it's a California quail on the lower left and a phainopepla which is kind of a cousin to a cardinal, with his little raised hair on top of his head there. And then I went to, I got up one morning and I went up to Mount Helix. This is a mountain, kind of a mountain called Mount Helix in the dead center of San Diego, right in the middle of the metropolis of San Diego. And what happens is during migration, the birds come up and they go up the mountain, over the top of the mountain, and at the top of this mountain was a eucalyptus tree. And this eucalyptus tree has what's called a lurpy eucalyptus tree, because it has all of these little bugs that cover themselves with a kind of sugary substance, and they stick to the leaves, and they're underneath them. So the birds come in, they're migrating all the way from South America, Central America, and they're coming in waves. And they stopped at this tree, and I was sitting underneath it. They stopped at this tree and filled up on these little bugs that are trying to hide themselves in this eucalyptus tree. And while I was there, I spent about 4 hours there. Over 500 birds came into this tree. So the very pretty hermit warbler, which is one of the birds I was hoping to see there, they're darting all over the tree. They eat a few of these bugs, and then they continue their journey. And then a new flock was coming in over the hill. Townsend warbler was, he's so pretty this time of year. They just stand out. And then a black-headed grosbeak on the upper left, and then a Cooper's hawk, and then down on the lower left, a western tanager, and then the Wilson's warbler on the right, which has a little black cap on top of his head. And he is, and there were probably 150 Wilson's warblers came over to that tree in about, in the 4 hours that I was there. So, let me go back out. So those are the birds that I have, the two of the trips I went on this year. And then let me see if I can, I'll show you where I'm headed, which is this one.
While you're getting set up, let me do our mid-show thank you. And so, they're still looking at you. Let me look at me. Here we go. Hi. I want to thank DVE Store. They are the folks, well, it's Guy Cochran, who allows us to use this webinar and is how we get the show started. And then I wanted to thank the 090 people, that's the office hours folks, and they give us the back end part to use to do the production. And at the end of the show, we'll talk about the people who are here today. But I wanted to stop in the middle and ask you, please, to send us questions or topics or suggestions, or if you want to be on a panel, send us that too. And our email address is birdingwithlois@gmail.com. There should be a graphic coming up right now so that you can write it down later. All right, we are archived on YouTube. We hope that you will be enjoying us, and we hope that you will join us at some point in some capacity. All right, today we have CHRIS Taylor. We've been talking about how he got into birding, what he's been doing, and his spring migration things. Now I want to ask CHRIS the big question. You're going away for 5 weeks. Where are you going? What are you going to do? What's it going to be like? Have you ever been there before? All those things.
Well, I'm going up to Alaska. So I've been to Alaska before. Alaska has, as you can imagine, it's got a habitat and a lot of birds that you don't see. The majority of birds that are migrating up from South America go all the way up into Canada to breed. And depending on food source, habitat source, predators, things like that. So part of birding is, as you get your list up there to somewhere that's you're running out, for your life list, if you're running out of birds to see, of new birds, like I said, I was about 650 life birds. So my brother, who is about 700 life birds, he said, let's go up to Alaska. We'll go on a tour to Gamble, which is on St. Lawrence Island. So Gamble is the epitome of I can see Russia from my house. So it's and I'll show you here. I'll just give you an idea of what I'll show you on Google Earth where I'm going. So here's Google Earth. And so I'm going to leave San Diego, and we're going to go up to Anchorage. And so we're going to go up to Anchorage, and we're going to do some birding around Anchorage. And then we're going to Gamble. And Gamble is on St. Lawrence Island. And St. Lawrence Island is this little island right here. This little island. And as you can see, if I back out, as you can see, this place right over here, if you can see my cursor, that's Russia. So the city of Gamble is on this little peninsula out here. And there are, what you hope for is you hope for birds that are migrating in or being blown. So you're hoping for a big storm, because what you want is you want the birds that are migrating, Asian birds that are migrating up the coast of Russia, to get blown into and get tired of being in the ocean, flying over the ocean. You want them to land on Little Gamble and get a rest there. And while you're there, so right now it's middle of migration season. So you get land birds that are typically in Asia. Hopefully they'll blow in, and you get between these two land masses, you get a lot of seabirds flying by. So you'll get least auklets, some days there's 100,000 of them flying through that strait every day. So from there, then we're going to go back to, we fly back to Anchorage, which is way over here. And then we're going to go out to the Pribilof Islands, which is this little island in the middle of the Bering Sea. And it takes 4 hours. It takes 4 hours to fly there from Anchorage on a twin engine plane. Doesn't sound very appealing to me, but it's and so we're hoping for different species of birds. And while we're up there, so we figured we'd do 2 trips in one. So we're going to spend about 10 days up in Gamble and about 7 days here in the Pribilofs. And then we're going to head back out, and we're going to go back to Anchorage and do some more birding around Anchorage. So the thing about birds is they're migrating, but they typically they stop at shorelines. So they migrate. One of the ways they migrate is follow shorelines, follow natural things. So the mountain ranges go all the way up into Canada. So they have these, somehow, it hasn't been proven yet. They're following landmarks, they're following stars. They're getting back to where they started as young ones, and now. But most of the time they get stopped by bodies of water and they need to rest. So there's a huge concentration of birds near big bodies of water. My father and I went to Churchill, which I'll go zooming way back out here. Churchill is this little place here, and I'll back out. Churchill is on the Hudson Bay, way up in northern Canada, very close to the Arctic Circle. And when we were there 25 years ago, this was all full of icebergs. And I don't think there's as many icebergs anymore because it seems to be, they're getting smaller. But so we got there at this time of year, we got up to Churchill, and it was 10:30 at night, but it was completely lit. It was only like 2 hours of darkness. And so we ended up being able to bird at 10, 11 o'clock at night. Was a lot of fun. We'll come back out to the real world now.
And why would Hudson Bay have stopped them? Why wouldn't they just go along the shore? Because it looks like you were just really close to the shore there.
What they do is they are close to the shore. What they do is they go, you can imagine that shoreline is probably 500 miles, 400 miles, something. They go up to the shoreline, then they move around the shoreline. So we just happen to catch them right at Churchill. It's the only place where it's very habitable. So you can take a train to Churchill. And so there's people who live there year round with the polar bears, and there's polar bear tours, and everywhere in town, there's always somebody with a rifle because there's a lot of polar bears up in Churchill. And so certain times a year, there's great birding. There's right now about a month ago at Lake Erie, in Ohio, it's called the biggest week of birding, and birds come from all over, and they get stopped at Lake Erie, and they stop in this place called McGee Marsh to rest and feed, and then they get up enough energy to fly across the lake. And it's some of the most spectacular birding you can find because all these tired warblers they're walking around at your feet because they're too tired to fly and get away from you. A lot of fun.
There's some places in the East Coast and West Coast that are also in a similar thing. I'm thinking of Cape May.
Yeah.
And isn't there one up by Bolinas?
I don't know about that. Cape May is a fabulous place because they get channeled right up that coastline, and a lot of really good birders go to Cape May in spring and fall. Spring, it's a lot easier to identify warblers because they're colorful. In the fall, they've shed all their colors and they're coming back, and they're typically drab olive. And so you have to understand what a bird looks like in fall plumage.
Yeah. I think we should do a segment sometime on the different colors within a species. And sometimes it's the boys and the girls, like the house finches, or sometimes it's adult and juvenile, like the white-crowned sparrow. Sometimes it's region. There are regional differences, and sometimes it's just whether they're in courting attire or they're resting for the winter.
Yeah, no, I agree. In California, we have this called a California scrub jay, and in Florida, there's a Florida scrub jay, and they're very similar. If you go out to the Santa Cruz Islands, which are just off the coast, there's an island scrub jay that happened to sometime flew over there, and it's much bluer than the California scrub jay. So it's, but birding isn't really totally about identifying bird. Birding is really about being out in nature. It's really, because when I go birding, yes, it's fun to see birds. It's fun to see new birds, but being out in nature and just with a pair of binoculars and feeling the wind and listening to birds, it's very difficult. It's very difficult to think of anything else when you're listening for a bird to call. I mean, what are you really thinking about when you're listening for a sound? Because you're not thinking about paying the bills. You're not thinking about problems that you have. You're just out in nature and you're paying attention to nature and the wind and the sun and the bird calls and things like that. It's just a way of being outside.
Yeah. I think for me, in addition to just being outside, it's also about figuring out what that bird is, because I'm not so advanced that I can just look at it and go, oh yeah. I mean, there's a few that I can do that with, like the scrub jays, but it's also about seeing other people as I'm there going like this, and they walk up and they look at me and go, oh, look, did you see that? That's a scrub jay. You know what that scrub jay is? And sharing that enthusiasm, sharing that, ooh, look at that bird. And that's, for me, the nicest part. I mean, I like watching the birds, but.
I totally agree that most of the people that are out there have the same philosophy. We're kind of conservationists typically out there. The places where the most birds are also where the most birders are, because birds like pretty places with big trees and grass, and just like we like them. Mm-hmm. So you can go to any park in the country, and you can birds are going to be up there somewhere. Most of the time, warblers like to be in the top of trees. So birders get this thing called warbler neck.
Oh, yeah.
Warbler neck is looking up with binoculars around your neck. So this time of year, my neck muscles have stretched out pretty well. Still have sagging skin there, but my neck muscles have stretched out pretty well. And I can spend a lot of time looking at the top of trees, which is pretty hard to do. Maybe I could show you, I know we had a question. Maybe I can show you how I look for a bird in the morning and how I then transfer that to eBird.
Okay, so let's put up the next question, which I believe is, how does the eBird phone app work, and how do I record and edit a checklist? Well, let's first talk about how eBird works in general. We'll do the app at the end if we have time. So specify, what is eBird and how does one use it?
So I put together a couple slides so you could see. So let me go back here and switch this to. So eBird is from Cornell Lab, and it's the Cornell Lab of Ornithology, and it's eBird.org, and it has an amazing collection of it's an amazing website, and it's got an amazing amount of data that's driving the website. So you can explore birds, you can try to identify birds on there. There's places they collect all the sightings from all around the world, and I'll show you. So this is a map of eBird checklists. These are checklists that have been submitted. They're lights from all over the world. And you can even see in the middle of the ocean, those are shipping lanes. And the shipping lanes, people submit eBird checklists from shipping lanes with pelagic birds that they see. So you can see that there's an awful lot of birders in the US submitting checklists. And eBird actually has this. You can watch this live. You can watch checklists being submitted live. You can see the countries of the world all down on the coast of South America. I mean, in Colombia alone, there are 1,200 different species of birds in that one country. Just amazing amount of birds. So there's like they said, 738,000 all-time contributors. 63 million checklists. There's 10,600 species of birds. There's 1 billion bird observations go through Cornell Lab, which is pretty amazing. And so this is just one of the screens in there. If you're looking for a species, you can go in, you can explore the species, you can explore a region, you can look at a hotspot, you can go to a species map. And I use I use this all the time because, say, for example, I'm looking for a black and white warbler. What I do is I'll go put the black and white warbler in there, and I will try to figure out where in North America it's been seen. So the website has recordings, it has pictures submitted by people all over the world, it has recordings, and you can see by the map up in the top that North America is predominantly where that, and Central America where black and white warblers are. But you can dig deeper into eBird, and all of those little check mark, all those little squares, pixelated squares, are checklists where the black and white warbler has been seen. This is just one of the species. So you can see on the East Coast, it's much more prevalent on the East Coast. In San Diego, not as much. So then you can dig deeper, and inside of eBird, so the red little dots have been seen recently, the blue dots have been seen something in the past. So I can actually then say, okay, I want to go find that thing. It was seen at a specific location in El Cajon, say. And so you can, and then you can take this thing and you can actually, you get your recording, you get the Cornell Lab checklist on your phone, you can go record it in there. Now, if you're a new birder, you probably should stick with something like Merlin or one of the other apps. Merlin is a really good bird app, and you can start with take pictures of birds, and Merlin will help you identify it. You can get sounds of birds. Merlin's a really good app, all made by Cornell Lab. And then you can actually go in and listen to the songs and look at pictures of the birds and try to identify. These are all inside of the Merlin app. So if I go back out here, I'll show you. Whoops. So this is my phone. This is my app. I have a few things that I use in here. These are my birding apps. So one, I'll go in and I'll look at, this is the Sibley app, and I can go in and I can look at a glossy ibis, and I can find out, and I can look to see where it's been, or I can play a call of the glossy ibis, or I can go back in. This is one of the apps. I use this app called Bird's Eye NA, and Bird's Eye NA knows what birds I haven't seen yet this year, because down here it says San Diego, I've seen 254 species this year. So it'll tell me, if I go to nearby birds, it will tell me that recently there's been 142 species seen. Of those, I need 5. So I need a least tern, which has been seen, American bittern, willow flycatcher. So I can go on these lists, and I can see, and it will point out where that bird has been seen. And then I can go, I get up in the morning and I look at this and I say, well, I can just drive down, I can go right over to the beach and maybe I can see it. Gives me, kind of a direction and a heading. So, and then if I go back out, if I go back out, then I can open up my eBird checklist here, and it's updating the species in my area. And I can then start a checklist. It actually record track. It'll actually, if I'm walking 2 or 3 miles, it'll tell me where I went in that track. So that information goes up to Cornell of where the bird was actually seen. And then I can just go in here and say, okay, I saw a wood duck, and I can leave some comments in there. So very extensive app. It really helps bird conservation, and something that has made bird watching much easier to record back, because years ago I would just write them down on a notebook.
And I still have those written lists that I have not yet entered into eBird. I don't use an app. that's a very recent thing, but I use the eBird website and put in my lists of, and you say where you started, what time you ended, how many people were with you, and then you write down the birds you saw. And so I have dozens, maybe hundreds of little pieces of paper to be entered. Many of them are 10 or 15 years old. There's no point in entering that at that point, but what the heck? But the one thing that I really appreciate, because eBird is associated with Cornell University, they have volunteers who review checklists. So when I was in Wisconsin, and there were all these sandhill cranes and a few other things, and so I wrote down that I had seen XYZ bird, well, about a week later, after I was home and everything, I got a message. I got an email saying, "Hi, I'm so-and-so, and we're reviewing your list. Did you really see an XYZ bird? That would be a totally unusual rarity. That would be like the first bird in the state or something like that. And did you get a picture? Can you just describe what things you saw that led you to believe it was an XYZ bird?" And it was obvious to her, this was a number of years ago, it was obvious to her that I didn't know what I was talking about. I had seen this bird. I was in an area I wasn't familiar with, so I didn't know if it was common or not. I looked it up. I tried to key it out and I guessed wrong. So, but it's nice. It's nice. It means that the information that I'm putting in is actually being seen and used by people. So that's a good thing that they caught me.
No, it happens to every birder. I mean, I don't care what level of birder you are. If you put something, now you mentioned that you keep your birds in lists on paper. Well, so did I for years. And then when eBird came up, instead of having my 3-ring notebook, and I was keeping for myself, because keeping a list of birds has nothing to do with anybody else. I don't go around and tell people I have 650 and you only have 400. It has nothing to do with that. It's all personal. And identifying a bird as best you can is the way it. I don't want to go pretend I saw something if I didn't really see it, because that's just, I'm just cheating myself, because I'm the only one that's out there looking. So, if many times I will go and it says, boy, I think that was that, but I don't put it down. I'll go back out and, identify it again. So the eBird reviewers are they're all volunteers and they're all excellent birders. And yes, it feels like you were slapped on the wrist and I get them weekly. And that's one of the reasons of getting a camera. But now I know who the eBird reviewers are. So what I do is I send them the picture of the bird, and I said, "Is this a Pacific Slope flycatcher, or is this a wood-pecker?" And they said, before I put it down and submit it and get slapped on the wrist, I try to get the bird identified. So I don't do that. So I have this group of really good birders that I kind of do a loop. So I send them a picture, then I'll send somebody else a picture. So no matter, like in life, no matter how good of you are at something, there's always somebody better.
That's so true. Chris, I want to thank you for being the guest today, even though you're also one of the panelists. And that's it for our show today. I really appreciate everybody having been here. And in the few seconds left, is there anyone on crew who can tell me who's on crew today? I know Alan's here and I know JJ's here, but I don't know who else is working the show. So thank you, whoever you are.
Thank you, crew. Very enjoyable.
Yeah. Come back again. We'll be on Birding with Lois.